Here are the Fantasy Follows top 5 waiver wire players to target for Week 8 of fantasy football. The top player to target off of this week's waiver wire is Carlos Hyde, running back for the Seattle Seahawks. Hyde currently rostered in 12% of all leagues. Now, with Chris Carson injured in the Sunday night game versus Arizona, Hyde stepped in, 15 rushes, 68 yards, and a touchdown. And Carson's injury has already been described as week to week. So if you could pick up Hyde off of this week's waiver wire, then he may return you value not only this week, but potentially the week after. Now, it will be worth monitoring Hyde's status as well, as he also left that game a little banged up. But if healthy, he has a clear path to the workload in Seattle, and that's what makes him the top pick. Now, Hyde's run is not so great. They're playing the 49ers this week. They're allowing the fewest fantasy points to the running back spot. After that, Buffalo, the Rams, then Arizona. The numbers there are 16, 24, and 11. So none of them are really at the top, but Hyde is a name guy, and he's going to be one of the top picks this week. If you can go out and get him, you have a chance to get a player that you can use in your lineup with some regularity. Now, after the game on Sunday, head coach Pete Carroll, he was asked about Hyde's ability as he stepped in for Carson.
I thought he hit it really well. We ran the ball well tonight. Everybody was effective running the football, Russ included. I thought Carlos really stepped into the role and did a nice job. And, the big touchdown run, a couple other toss on our bench side, really, really nice hard ball running. He's a good football player. I'm glad we have him.
Here's the rest of this week's top 5, and I don't really consider this week all that strong of a week on the waiver wire. This might be one of those where you kind of sit it out, don't use your priority, perhaps let it build up a little bit, see if there's somebody that you can pick up after that period is over. But nonetheless, the top 5, at number 2, I've got Derek Carr, quarterback from the Raiders. I believe Carr is the top quarterback streamer this week. And last week, 284 yards, 2 touchdowns. That was 20.26 fantasy points versus Tampa Bay. He has been 20 or more fantasy points now in 3 straight games. Currently rostered in 30% of all leagues. The run of games for Carr, Cleveland, the Chargers, Denver, and then Kansas City. Those are the next 4. Cleveland allowing the 8th most fantasy points to the quarterback spot currently, and the Chargers allowing the 3rd most. Denver at 12, Kansas City at 24. So a nice run of games for Carr makes him a very possible quarterback streamer to pick up this week. At number 3, I've got Cole Beasley, wide receiver for the Buffalo Bills, currently rostered in 41% of all leagues. Beasley has kind of quietly had a nice season here. Last week against the Jets, 12 targets, 11 catches, 112 yards. That was 22.2 fantasy points. And he has had 6 or more targets in 6 of 7 games, and that was his second 100-yard game this season. The run of games for Beasley, New England, Seattle, Arizona, and then a bye. New England currently allowing the 20th most fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. So they're in the bottom half, but then Seattle currently allowing the most fantasy points to the wide receiver position. So that makes Beasley a name to target this week. At number 4, it's Eric Ebron, tight end for the Pittsburgh Steelers, currently rostered in 46% of all leagues. Last week versus the Titans, it was 8 targets, 6 catches, 50 yards. That was 11 fantasy points. And he has averaged 6 targets over his last 5 games. The run of games for Ebron, Baltimore, Dallas, Cincinnati, Jacksonville. A decent run. Baltimore right at the midway point, 16th in terms of fantasy points allowed to the tight end spot. But then after that, Dallas 9, Cincinnati 3, Jacksonville 5. So that is a nice run with some good potential from Ebron. And especially if Deontay Johnson remains out injured, he certainly is likely to see a few more targets. And at number 5, another possible quarterback streamer in Teddy Bridgewater from the Carolina Panthers, currently rostered in 44% of all leagues. This last week against the Saints, 254 yards, 2 touchdowns. That was 19.16 fantasy points. And his run of games, Atlanta, Kansas City, Tampa Bay, Detroit. The game you're paying attention to there is the very first one. The Falcons allowing the most fantasy points to the quarterback spot. So again, Bridgewater, a possible quarterback streamer this week. And a few bonus names to look at this week, starting with Zach Moss, running back from the Buffalo Bills, currently rostered in 46% of all leagues. This past week, 7 rushes, 47 yards, also 3 targets, 3 catches for 25 yards against the Jets. He saw the same amount of touches in that game as Devin Singletary. So you would think Moss, now returning from injury, continuing to work into that offense, has some potential there. And their run of games, again, it's New England, Seattle, Arizona, and then a bye. In terms of the running back spot, New England currently allowing the 12th most fantasy points. Seattle at 21, so they're in the bottom half, and then Arizona at 11. So Zach Moss is someone who could continue to see his value increase. Sterling Shepard, wide receiver for the New York Giants, back from injury, currently rostered in 29% of all leagues. Last week against Philadelphia, 8 targets, 6 catches, 59 yards, and a touchdown. And his run of games, not so great. Tampa Bay, Washington, Philadelphia, and then a bye. Tampa Bay at 26 and Washington at 32. So Washington is the fewest, the wide receiver spot, and Tampa Bay the 7th fewest. Philadelphia at 12, so a little bit better, but still a name to look at because Shepard is really one of the top guys that you can get in terms of players that might be available right now. Another player in that mold is Corey Davis from the Tennessee Titans, returning from injury. Currently rostered in 28% of all leagues. Now, this past week against Pittsburgh for Davis, 10 targets, 6 catches, 35 yards, and a touchdown. That was 15.5 fantasy points. He has seen 8 or more targets in 2 of his 4 games this season. Again, the run for Davis, not great. That's why these guys don't crack the top 5. Cincinnati, Chicago, Indianapolis, Baltimore. In terms of fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver spot, Cincinnati 17, Chicago 30, so the 3rd fewest, Indianapolis 18, Baltimore 24. So none of them great, but nonetheless, a top name that could still produce some value. And wow, I've actually got a Jet on this list. It's LaMichael Perrine, currently rostered in 17% of all leagues. The running back this last week, 11 rushes, 39 yards, and a touchdown. Also 3 targets, 2 catches. That was 13.5 fantasy points. And he was in on 70% of the snaps this game against the Bills, while Frank Gore was only in for 28%. So Perrine got a little more work, a little more value moving forward as a result. And of course, it's hard to find players at the running back spot this time of the season. So worth mentioning his name. And his run of games, Kansas City, New England, then a bye, then the Chargers. Not the best numbers, but not the worst. Kansas City 14th to the running back spot, New England 12th, then the Chargers 19th in after their bye. So a possible player that, who knows, could turn into a little bit of something that could return some value for your team. Be sure to join us this Sunday and every Sunday for the TFF Live Sunday pregame show, streaming right here on our YouTube channel. We're with you at 12 noon every week, taking you right up till game time, answering all your fantasy football questions, and getting you ready for your weekly matchups. And here's where you can find us. We are a brand new channel, so we appreciate you watching our videos. If you enjoyed our videos, please give us a thumbs up and a share. Click that subscribe button. Make sure you get those notifications anytime we have new content. And also, as a new channel, we continue to grow, and we have a goal of 100 new subscribers, so please help us to reach that goal. Also, be sure to leave us your comments below. Let us know if there are any players that you feel should be on these lists. You can check us out on Twitter at The Fantasy Follow, and that's fantasy spelled FNTSY. And don't forget, you can send us your fantasy football questions during the week on Twitter using the hashtag AskTFFLive, and we'll answer those questions live on our Sunday pregame show. On Facebook /The Fantasy Follow and our website, thefantasyfollow.com.